our kids are probably never going to experience the banking system. More and more of it's going to come off the exchanges. People are going to be paying others for their goods and services in Bitcoin. It's a complete paradigm shift. Once you see that fiat is a Ponzi scheme, it completely changes your mind. Bitcoin does exactly what it's supposed to do. At block 840,000, the supply decreases from 6.25 Bitcoin to 3.125 Bitcoin with no regulation, no regulating party, no government, nobody in the middle, nobody forcing it to happen. It'll show people that this is doing exactly what it's meant to do, and it'll prompt more people to put 1 to 5 to 10% of their portfolio into something they can trust.
I saw in your Twitter handle the CFA tag, and that you have a history in the traditional financial system. And before I go into my first actual question, I just want to quickly know, what is CFA? I learned it's like a chartered financial analyst. Is it bad that I don't know about it? And what what is that?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like the CFA doesn't really have anything to do with Bitcoin. It's more like, I mean, for me, it was more about building the mindset that I could do whatever I wanted, right? I mean, not everybody needs to know what the CFA is. Not everybody needs to know what the CPA is. You don't necessarily need to know or have a finance background to be a Bitcoiner, right? I think some of the smartest Bitcoiners actually have no finance background, so it's perfectly fine that you don't know this.
And what's the CFA? Is it like an exam you can take, and then you have like certain financial skills, or like certain
So
financial yeah?
So it's the chartered financial analyst. It's essentially it's a series of exams, 3 exams that test you on different parts of the financial, I guess, financial planning kind of route. So they ask you not really financial planning, but financial asset evaluation, just making decisions, that kind of thing. I think that's the main thing that it helps with. It teaches you how to do certain calculations, how to value things, how to look a little deeper, I guess, how to
Did,
understand things at a deeper level.
did this help you in understanding Bitcoin?
Definitely,
Learning
I
what?
think I mean, there was a part of it that had nothing to do with Bitcoin, of course, but there was it definitely helped my understanding, because now, I mean, after I understood how the stock market works, why people use the stock market, the bond market, I feel like Bitcoin just put it all together, kind of thing, right? The CFA doesn't really consider that we could use anything other than the US dollar as money, which is kind of, or well, not the US dollar, but fiat currencies. We don't really go into anything else, right? We don't go into going back to the gold standard. It's just a commodity. It's just something. There's nothing about what money is, right? So I think learning about Bitcoin just put all of that together. It showed me, why do people even have to invest in the first place?
Yeah, it's fascinating that so many people in the financial system that are really deep into trading, they're really deep into finding value into things and investing in companies, investing in hedge funds, they're managing stuff, and they never ask themselves the question, what is money actually? I see a
Yeah.
lot of experts or analysts or financial manager and advisors that have no clue what money actually is and where it's coming from. And you have a really interesting long history in that traditional financial system, if I can say that. How different was your view before Bitcoin, or were you already in the Bitcoin mindset and just discovered Bitcoin then?
No, it was completely different. I was, keep in mind, I was always surrounded by uh, stocks, bonds, yield, dividends, rental income. I was actually a realtor before
Mm.
I was working at one of the big banks in Canada as a bond analyst, and I left in 2021 to do my real estate license. So I got my real estate license. I did pretty well in the first year, but I didn't really like it. I guess after I started really thinking about how Bitcoin works, how it's a way to save without having to buy something like real estate to save value, right? Real estate it should be used as a house, right? People shouldn't be using real estate as a savings tool, because it's not savings, right? Real estate it has utility. People need it to survive. It's one of the basic needs of human beings, right? So the fact that people are using real estate, I mean, I was part of the system where I was a realtor. People were using real estate as an investment. They're taking they're taking supply off the market. They're increasing demand. They're increasing prices. It's leading to more and more people being left behind, right? Our generations. I'm 31. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
25.
25. Okay, so I've spoken to people in your in your not your. I guess are you Gen Z?
I actually don't know. I think I'm in the on the edge. I think I'm
Mhm.
1998 born, so
Okay.
I'm on the verge of two. But yeah, I think I'm Gen Z or close, not Gen Z.
Oh, well, both of our generations. I mean, most people don't think they can afford a house, right? If you speak to people, they the majority don't feel like they can afford to buy a place to live in, so they're gonna be renting forever. And who owns
Yeah,
all those properties, right? It's the older generations. Most of them are owned by older generations. There are people who own thousands of houses, right? So I mean, back to what I was talking about. So as a realtor, I was helping those conversations. I was telling people, hey, you should be buying real estate to store value because this is the best way to go. Now, I mean, I feel like it's once you understand Bitcoin, it's kind of it goes against my morals to tell people, hey, you should continue buying real estate. I mean, I was making great money doing it. I'm actually making less money now teaching about Bitcoin than I was when I was a realtor. I mean, I could continue being a realtor, continue selling people rental properties, but I choose not to because I don't feel like it's the right way to go.
for new people listening, and maybe it's like Bitcoin just in the starting of the rabbit hole. Why is buying more and more real estate going against your morals and ethics?
Well, you're taking supply off the market. You're increasing prices. Anybody who doesn't own a house is being forced to pay higher and higher prices. So there are some numbers where I was actually sorry, one second. I have it on my screen here. There was uh have you seen that price chart for 1971?
The from the website, WTF happened in 1997.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
So there's a price chart. It says a house is something like $25,000 or $23,000, and the average salary at the time was 10.5K. So a house was 2.3 times the average salary. Today, a house is probably 8 to 10 times the average salary, right? So I
yeah,
mean,
it's crazy.
prices will continue to go up, right? It'll keep going up, and the main reason for that is demand, right? A lot of houses are held by people who are renting them out, and they'll continue increasing the price because they want the cash flow. They want to hedge against inflation. They want to maximize their profits. As they maximize their profits, the price rises in general, right? Um, I mean, there are people who have full control of the market. There are people who have thousands of rental units, and if they increase the price $20, they're making thousands more every month, right? So to them, it's like, okay, this is more cash flow for me, but they don't see that we're increasing the price of rent for everybody. So when it takes them out of the equation, it just makes it easier for the people at the bottom to actually be able to access real estate.
I had yesterday an interesting conversation with Eric V. I don't know, maybe you saw him on Twitter, the cannabis farmer.
Oh yeah.
Cool videos about Bitcoin. And yesterday, my 50th episode was with him on Bitcoin, and we talked about the topic where when Bitcoin is sucking up more and more financial energy, it automatically also drives down over the long run housing prices, basically making housing more affordable and basically driving homelessness slowly down with that mechanism. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is more profitable than renting out properties, so why not? That's exactly what's
Uh,
going to happen. I mean, more properties are going to go on the market. Mm, Properties are going to be even larger properties, like buildings, are going to be sold for cheaper. They're already being sold for cheaper, right? Um, think about how many commercial buildings have gone down in price. There was a building that sold for it was like $2.5 million. If you replace that with a condo, what's going to happen? Think about how much more supply there is, and you can easily do that, right? It's not difficult. You have to pay the development costs, of course, but at the end of the day, it's it's possible to be done. Maybe people won't choose to do that if they don't want to. I mean, it is however they do it, but yeah, definitely prices will definitely go down. Prices, because you can increase the supply at any point.
How did you come from this traditional mindset, being a real estate realtor? Now you're in Bitcoin, you have the Bitcoiner mindset. How long was that period, that switching period for you, and like how did you come to the conclusion that Bitcoin, as I hear it from you, is the best way to store wealth?
I think it. I think I've always kind of had this mindset. I just didn't know Bitcoin existed. I didn't understand what it was. Um, Keep in mind, because my parents are from India, they have the saver mindset, right? They don't think of
Mhm.
investing as something that they should be doing. They in India, or whenever back whenever they were saving, whenever they were younger, their parents were saving in gold, right? So I mean, I guess the belief now is that gold is valuable because it has certain properties, right? And people believe. I did some surveys. A lot of people actually believe that U.S. dollars are also backed by gold. So I guess I think what Bitcoin does is, when you think about it, U.S. dollar saving in U.S. dollars and saving in gold, they eliminate risk. I think most people in the world in general don't want to take excess risk, right? They don't want to. Who can blame them, right? Why would you want to work for something and then be willing to lose it on a gamble, right? At the end of the day, stocks and real estate are gambles, right? Bitcoin, I think, competes with it competes with gold and U.S. dollars as a savings vehicle, and I feel like that's very deeply rooted in my family's history, right? Saving is deeply rooted. Even investing in general, it wasn't really a big thing until maybe 200 years ago, right? You could invest in yourself, but you're not going to be investing in multinational corporations or houses to rent out to whoever you can, right? I mean, there were people who were doing that, but it wasn't as widely done as it is today, right? So I feel like the mindset changed because I saw that all of this cash flow, all of this, all of this rental income, all of this interest income, it's all fake. It's all built on a fake form of money. Once you see that, it changes everything. When I already had the Bitcoin mindset, I just didn't know it existed. So once I saw that, I realized, okay, this is just completely the opposite of what we have today.
Yeah, it's funny because I always was also a complete saver. I
Hmm.
even like I remember when I was a small kid and my mom gave me like €5 for the lunch time, and I remember like buying two really good things with like €4, and now it's like I need to spend like €5 for one good thing. And I remember where every day I put something away. I never used the whole €5,
Mm.
and this was through my whole life. And when I came to the age of 18, 19, I was like, what do I do with the money? Because I did not know why it was depleting of financial energy, but I had an intrinsic feeling that it does nothing and it loses value. I had no
Yeah.
clue about the monetary system, but I kind of knew what's going on. So I tried stocks investing. I tried everything that's possible in the financial system, with bonds, with stocks. I even thought about real estate, but in the time where I thought about real estate, I actually came to know about Bitcoin. And I did really good, and people are asking me, oh, how do you do that, how do you do that? And I came to know that the problem is not that people want to pick stocks and be a financial manager. They want to just store and save their financial energy that they worked so hard for. And it's interesting to see when people are finally getting Bitcoin, they're like, oh, I just have to provide society with a lot of value, getting value then back, and this value I can save in Bitcoin, and that's it. That's my financial strategy, and that's the best strategy for you for the next 10 years.
Yeah. That's the entire
And
retirement plan, right? Add value, consume less than you produce, save the rest in Bitcoin. I mean, you could have an emergency fund. You could maybe do something like, um, you could have. I would personally. I don't sell insurance, but I think term insurance is great because it gives you insurance for a certain period of time. Other than that, I mean, I feel like that's the plan. right? So spend less than you earn, save in Bitcoin, buy insurance, have an emergency fund. That's it. Most people are good with that, right? Most people don't need anything past that. Once you understand that you should be spending less, it becomes so easy.
Was it a challenge for you to be Bitcoin only? To be not playing around with a lot of altcoins, not playing around with other things. I feel like a lot of Bitcoiners going through that journey. They discover Bitcoin, then they're going to altcoins, and then they're coming back to Bitcoin because they discover, oh, it's actually only Bitcoin. And especially people that are coming from the traditional financial system, I feel like they're more towards, oh, I have to diversify through different kinds of coins. I see that a lot, especially from stock investors, that they are coming to Bitcoin. How was your journey? Like, did you were jumping to Bitcoin only, or had you always some altcoins?
I used to hold some Ethereum. I sold it at a profit. I had some Solana. I sold it at a profit, but I mean, I feel like there was nothing there, no real substance. I mean, people are using Ethereum. People say, okay, smart contracts. Okay, that's great, but right now, what are you using it for? You're using it for NFTs, right? So I mean, at the point, I didn't think of it that way. I thought, okay, yeah, this has a cult following. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna buy it. Sounds great. But then I started learning more and more. I think I started, like you said, I started with Bitcoin, and then I saw the altcoins, and then I moved back to Bitcoin. So exactly like what you said. The best book that I read was the Bitcoin Standard. That one was great. I feel like that one just it showed you how money works. Once you see that, you start thinking, why do most people, why would anybody want to hold something that can be replaced with money when it can be replaced with Bitcoin, right? Why would you want to hold real estate, or why would you want to hold some random shitcoin when you can use Bitcoin and Lightning or whatever layer twos are in the future? I don't know how great they will be. I've heard issues with Lightning. I've had no problems so far. But why would you hold an altcoin if you have that capability with Bitcoin, right? The only layer that needs to be secure is the base layer. Everything else does not need to be secure, right? I mean, of course, you have your own levels. There's custodians, there's custody, there's all that stuff involved, but the base layer needs to be the most secure, and it's intentionally slow, right? So once you get that, it's hard to keep thinking about all the random shit coins that are out there.
Was the use cases that what drove you from being diversified in altcoins or shitcoins and then to Bitcoin only? Like you saw the no longer use cases of the
No,
altcoins,
it
or
was a
what?
pure gamble. I could tell you straight up, it was a pure gamble. I didn't know anything about them.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
I think most people are like that though, right? Most people who are into altcoins, they're purely just gambling. They're just seeing people buy it and they buy it themselves.
Yeah, and it's so sometimes so stupid to see the people are like, oh, I want to increase my Bitcoin stack, so I am going to altcoins. And I'm like,
Yeah,
this can be over tomorrow. Like you don't know what's going on with that random altcoin, and of course, maybe it can outperform Bitcoin, but maybe it can also go to zero tomorrow. You don't know. It's
yeah,
like going to a casino and gambling 100 euros on red. Of course, you
yeah,
can make 500 euros with it, but you can also lose 100 euros with it. Like, why are
yeah,
you doing that? You're playing with your life's energy.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, as how I think of it is, if I ever do need another coin in the future, I'll buy it with my Bitcoin. It'll likely be at a loss. Like the other coin will likely be trending towards zero in terms of Bitcoin. So I'll be buying it at a discount most likely. But most likely I won't even need another coin, right? I mean, if I do, I buy it. If I don't, I didn't lose anything, right?
Uh, when we are now going from that stage where like, oh, Bitcoin is now in before the halving, we are having now the Bitcoin ETF approved. What do you see this year? Maybe the effects of the halving. I think I also saw a highlight on your X posts or tweet posts where you said that this halving is not only about decreasing the new supply. What do you think about the halving and what impact it can have on Bitcoin? on the fundamentals and maybe also on the price?
So I think in that thread, I remember the thread that you're talking about. I think the main thing that I was trying to point at is that this is more about trust. The halving, of course, will have an impact, but when people see that Bitcoin does exactly what it's supposed to do at block 840,000, the supply decreases from 6.25 Bitcoin to 3.125 Bitcoin with no regulation, no regulating party, no government, nobody in the middle, nobody nobody forcing it to happen. When people see that miners are just doing it because they know how the system works, they just want to play by the rules. I feel like that's going to change things because right now people think, okay, you can create as much Bitcoin as you want to. Who's gonna stop who's gonna force the halving to happen? Miners can. I've actually received this question. Um, Somebody said, "What if a miner wants to create their own fork and keep getting 6.25 Bitcoin? There's no value there, right? It's worthless." So, if a miner, for example, if they want to go ahead and put in a Coinbase transaction for the 6.25 Bitcoin, their block is going to be rejected, right? So there's it's all already set up. We already know where this is going. It's just that people don't trust it, right? As trust in the US dollar is dropping with the government printing more and more and more and more and more and more and more money, trust in Bitcoin will increase, right? Because people will see, hey, this thing is doing exactly what it's doing. So as the US dollar inflates, as more and more of it's printed over time, all of that wealth will move to Bitcoin. I think more and more people will realize that. More and more people will see that, hey, this thing is working exactly how people told us it will work. So let's start figuring out what they're trying to say here. I think what it'll do is it'll, more than the impact of the actual supply decreasing, I think it'll have the impact of people realizing that these guys know what they're talking about. They've done the research. They know where this can potentially go. So maybe we'll do the research too. Maybe we'll start learning. I think the impact will be the usual impact is what, 6 to 9 months after the halving, something like
Mm.
that. I think that's the time when people learn, right? That's the time when people try to figure out, hey, this thing is gonna go crazy. I've seen people who have taken 15 hours to get to this point. I've seen people who have taken. It took me something like 3,000 hours, right? 3 to 5,000 hours because I was already buying Bitcoin, but I wasn't all in until maybe 6 months ago. Right now, other than my primary residence, I don't consider it as an investment. But now I'm all in, right? So what the halving will do is it'll show people that this is doing exactly what it's meant to do, and it'll prompt more people to put 1 to 5 to 10% of their portfolio into something they can trust, right? Um, Instead of just blindly buying an index fund, maybe they'll put $5 out of their $100 weekly into Bitcoin, and that's going to accumulate very, very quickly.
There are now two things coming up in my mind, and there's like this future vision that we have, and that sometimes differs between Bitcoiners. Also, this the one string is like the old or traditional financial system, the fiat world, the rent-seeking container effect, and all this stuff that makes fiat fiat. And it seems like there's this new system, Bitcoin, where we are building so many great technologies with Lightning, with Fedimint, with a lot of layers on top of it. And it seems like there's a leak from that system into the new system.
Yeah.
And like the first part of my question would be like, can this system survive long term, the old fiat system survive long term over maybe like the next like let's take me as example. I'm 25. If I live through 200, it will be like the next 75 years. Do you think I will see a day where there is no more fiat?
I mean, if you really think about it, it feels like governments are trying to make it more and more difficult for people to use fiat because a lot of people use fiat. I mean, they're just going to use a lot of older people use cash, right? They don't even use credit cards, right? So cash is disappearing. Why would a younger generation use something that they have to go to a bank to set up? right? Why would they? There was a talk by Andreas Antonopoulos about this. He was talking about how our kids, like maybe his kids, I don't know how old he is, maybe in his 40, maybe in his late 30s, early 40s. Um, he was saying how our kids are probably never going to experience the banking system. They're not going to. Why would they want to go into a bank, right? Because what's going to happen is their children are going to have our children are going to have little amounts of Bitcoin, and maybe they'll start accumulating on their own. Maybe they'll start exchanging with their friends, right? Maybe they'll use Bitcoin to maybe they'll start smaller and smaller businesses as they're younger. So why would they use something like a fiat currency where they have to go through a government, right? Why would anybody choose to go through a currency that is controlled? You can be censored. You're going to be forced to be paying a tax, right? You're not going to have any choices, right? I think with Bitcoin, it's freedom, or one is freedom, one is slavery, right? One is a way to increase your wealth over the long term. The other one is designed to decrease your wealth over the long term. So why would people ever want to go with fiat currency? So back to your question, you said, will we see this 15, 20 years? We might. I mean, there's probably still going to be people trusting it, but over time, with the ETFs, more and more people are able to save because they don't want to put in the time to understand how Bitcoin works. They don't want to put in the time for hardware wallets, buying it from an exchange. They don't want to do all that. But when they see the performance, they may want to do more research, right? More and more of it's going to come off the exchanges. People are going to be paying others for their goods and services in Bitcoin over the next 10, 15 years. I personally think fiat currencies are set to die, right? I think one of the most difficult things about orange pilling someone is trying to convince them that something digital has value. And with CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, governments are telling people, hey, something digital has value, so it's fine if you use digital money. I mean, they're basically just setting the trap up for themselves, right? People only used fiat currencies because of the cash. They like the privacy aspect of it, but I mean, over time, there will be more and more reasons to go into Bitcoin, right? Even right now, people are figuring it out. With CBDCs, it'll be at a much faster pace.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. Interesting. I see a lot of discussions in Bitcoin where they're like, CBDCs are a threat to Bitcoin and a threat to our lives in general. And you see it more like a Trojan horse of digital money. Like CBDCs are like this. Oh, see, everything digital has actual value. And you can also have this Bitcoin because it also is digital. And with CBDCs, you have spending limits. There's no spending limit on Bitcoin. You have with CBDCs total control, and you're going to get monitored. With Bitcoin, you have the control and you're not going to be monitored. It's like
Yeah.
CBDCs can be actually like a Trojan. I never thought about that. It's a really interesting thought. The more I think about it, the more true it is. CBDCs as a Trojan horse for Bitcoin. Interesting.
Yeah. I feel like it's gonna take us deeper and deeper into digital currencies as people. I've heard the phrase "all roads lead to Bitcoin." CBDCs are good for Bitcoin too.
Very true. Then when we have like now we have covered the CBDC or fiat side of things. When we now go to the Bitcoin side of things, how the old system crashes or crumbles down slowly. How are we gonna build on Bitcoin? And I know there are a lot of thoughts around what layer two, what layer three, how many layers will be there on Bitcoin. And this is like a topic where I'm actually undereducated, I think. And I just love the base layer. And I think so many great things will happen on this layer on top of Bitcoin. And with Lightning, as you said, with I heard 2-3 guests about talking about Fedimint. I think even Jeff Booth mentions Fedimint sometimes. There are so many interesting projects on top of Bitcoin. How do you see Bitcoin evolving the development on like basically building Bitcoin for the next 8 billion people to be on this whole base layer and single base layer on top of Bitcoin?
I mean, I think over time, uh, these layers are going to get better. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on how they work or the mechanics or all that. I'm not, definitely not. But I do understand how the financial system is built, right? Even the current financial system, it's built with Swift at the bottom, and then there's all these banks, and then there's Visa, MasterCard above that, right? People try to compare the base layer to Visa, which makes no sense, right? If you so with the base layer, you can have, they say, oh, 1 transaction or 7 transactions per second. Visa does 40,000 transactions per second. But the thing is that there's a major difference here, right? Swift can't be reversed, right? Swift is the best comparison to the Bitcoin blockchain. Um, you can't reverse transactions. Once your transaction is done, it's done, right? The other side has to send back the money if you want it, right? If you want to get it back, if you make a mistake, they're probably not going to. Same thing with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin gives you final settlement. Credit cards don't give you final settlement. Credit cards, the balances, I believe they settle up to 60 days out. So if if you're a merchant and you want to be paid in Visa versus if you want to be paid in Bitcoin, your customer can cancel their transaction for 60 days with a Visa, with a MasterCard. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's always going to be there can be fraud, there can be certain issues. That's just how the system works, right? We rely on a system built on trust, right? With Bitcoin, it's not built on trust. You can't reverse a transaction. If you pay somebody, you're doing it out of your free will, right? You're not just, you can't just tap a card unless you have it. You probably won't store a large amount of your Bitcoin on your phone. If somebody steals your phone and they start spending, that's on you, right? You can't get it back. But there are ways around this, right? There's solutions. You can put a lot of your Bitcoin offline. You don't have to worry about that. I think that was one of the main things that Satoshi wanted to achieve with this, right? He wanted to get rid of all these fees that in the fiat financial system are charged just for either holding money, for we're charged an NSF fee we're charged a fee for not having money in our account, right? You go from negative to even more negative. That's how the system works. Even if your paycheck is coming in 1 or 2 days, right? The system is there's so many redundancies here. There are so many issues that can be dealt with. Let's say we got paid every day instead of every 2 weeks, right? There would be no NSF fees. With Lightning, employers can probably do that, right? They'll be able to do that, I think. Lightning or whatever the other layers are. I don't know what the layers will be. I don't know what will succeed. All I know is that the base layer is secure. Whatever technologies you want to build on the base layer, do it. Eventually, we'll figure it out. I think people will go to the one that has the best reputation. I think I think it's Lightning or Liquid, one of those two. Like I said, I don't really know too much about them. I don't act like I do. I haven't done the research on them. So I think whichever one survives, it survives. I'm not in the spending my Bitcoin phase yet, right? So I'm not worried about what will be the future of the layer twos. That may be 5, 10 years from now, right? Right now, what I'm worried about is keeping my private keys safe. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, self custody, keeping the private
Yeah.
keys to yourself, and don't mess it up. That's a
Yeah.
big thing. Like, don't build a maze around your Bitcoin so you cannot access them, but also
Yeah.
don't put them somewhere online so a hacker can easily have them. That's like the balance and the challenge that we have now as a Bitcoin. We are now in the store value phase. Clearly, as
Yeah.
you said, we are not in the phase where we are spending Bitcoin, where we are doing all the stuff. We are now in the store of value phase.
Yeah.
And even though we are in that phase, Bitcoiners already started to spend Bitcoin. There are Bitcoin meetups, they are paying with it. There are shops that accept Bitcoin. There are I just saw a website before where you can buy Bitcoin art, and you can only pay with Bitcoin. It's not a Bitcoin discount. They don't accept anything else than
Oh yeah.
Bitcoin. And that's like, oh, interesting. That's like, if more and more people do that, and I mean that was with a Bitcoin art, but if more and more Bitcoiners do that, maybe at some point the store will also do that in like 5-10 years. And then this store does it, and they're like, oh, Bitcoin is actually better for me. And if I want fiat, I can convert some of my Bitcoin then to fiat and use it if I really need it. It's interesting how this those phases will go in Bitcoin, and I think a lot about how those phases will interact with each other, like from collectible to store of value to medium of exchange to eventually as satoshis will be our unit of account.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. You also I had one post that stood out to me when I was scrolling through your tweets, and I was like, that's so true. You said you are not against capitalism, you're against fiat. And especially when I talk with more left leaning friends of mine, they are like, oh, I'm against this and this and this. And I'm like, you are right. This is all bad, but this is not capitalism. This is the fiat system. And you also made a thread with that. Maybe you can explain, like, what do you mean by not against capitalism, but you're against fiat?
So I think most people who think that they're against capitalism, they don't understand that capitalism, like the capitalism that we have today, is built on a system that's meant to make your life more expensive. So it doesn't matter how much technology improvements you have. It doesn't matter um, if you produce more products. Prices will get more expensive no matter what, right? And it's intentionally designed to do that. How is that? How does that work? It works because fiat currencies, the supply is there's no limit, right? There's no limit to the supply. You can print as many dollars. Governments can just issue as many dollars as they want. There's literally no physical substance behind it. They can borrow as many dollars as they want. All it does is dilutes everybody else's holdings, right? So let's say you want to pay. Let's say you're getting paid $100,000 at your job. Your $100,000 10 years ago, $100,000 would have paid rent. It would have paid groceries. It would have paid for entertainment. It would have paid for some investments. It would have given you some savings on the side. It would have paid for um, your children. It would have paid for extracurricular activities if you want to go, let's say, play a sport, or if you want to go to the gym. It'll pay for all of that. Today, a lot of people are struggling with $100,000, right? Because right now, rent, the basic rent is in my area, for example, the basic rent for a one bedroom condo is $2,700 a month, right? So $2,700 a month works out to almost $35,000 a year, right? So 35% of your before tax income, if you earn $100,000, 35% of your before tax income is going towards rent, right? That means that after tax, in Ontario, we're paying something like at that point you're paying something like 30 to 40% in taxes. So 30 to 40% are going towards taxes. 30 to 40% is going towards your income. You have 20% left to do whatever you want with, right? So I think a lot of people have the right idea in their mind where they think, oh, capitalism is designed to increase prices because they need to make profits, right? The main reason why prices are going up is not because of capitalism. It's going up because the value of the money that you're using to assign value to other things is going down, right? I think that's what people need to grasp. Once they understand that, it's impossible to reject Bitcoin, right? And most people don't understand that part. They have the right idea in their minds, but they don't understand that part. So I think um, with capitalism prices are supposed to go down. More and more production, more competition. It promotes competition. With fiat currencies, only certain people, certain companies, there's too big to fail companies. They get preference, and their results compound over time. So that's what people are pissed off with. Even let's say Apple, for example. Apple charges a 30% fee for people to sell their app on their app store, right? A 30% fee. They wanted to charge that fee to Nostr for every I think it was something like that, for every Satoshi that's moved, 30% goes to Apple. That's what they wanted. But it doesn't work that way. I mean, as more and more companies try to take on those kinds of roles, as they try to do those things, as they try to take their cut, people are going to move away, right? I know a lot of people who moved away from iPhone to Android because they want to continue using Nostr, right? And more people will do that over time.
Do we even live in a capitalism system if capital itself, the money, is not free?
I don't think we do. I think it's more there. Have you heard of something called crony capitalism?
No.
It's basically where friends and family of governments get better treatment than everybody else. And that's exactly what's happening, right? Whoever gets paid under the table, whoever pays you under the table gets the best. That's what lobbying is, right? That's mostly what lobbying is meant to do.
That's basically, I mean, if you say it hard, it's like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, they're taking money from they're promising money to old investors at the expense of new investors. Pensions. That's exactly what pensions are.
Yeah, it's for me so hard to see, and that it's so interesting because a lot of people that are against Bitcoin, and it gets those voices are getting like they used to be really loud, and not they are now they are not as loud anymore, but they said a lot, especially when I came into Bitcoin. Ah, yeah, but Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. It can only go up if people buying more of it. I heard that so many times, even from intelligent people, and I was like, "What?" like, not maybe not like people that did a lot of good stuff in their life. I heard that from them, and I was like, this does not make sense at all. But I could not put the finger on like why does it not make sense. And this put me down the rabbit hole of Ponzi schemes, and I researched what is a Ponzi scheme. And then I looked at the fiat system. Then I looked at Bitcoin, and I was like, wait, fiat system is actually a Ponzi scheme. And I was already like 1 year into the Bitcoin education. And I was like, what? This was like this glass breaking inside of your head, and you just like learned something completely new that actually changed your perspective a lot. And this was like gradually, but all of the sudden, I was like, what? Fiat is a Ponzi scheme, and it's that's interesting. Yeah, how I don't know if you mentioned it before, maybe a little bit already, but how did you actually go ahead and learn about Bitcoin? Was it like books? Was it like podcasts? How did you go ahead and learn all this knowledge about Bitcoin?
What you were talking about, it's a complete paradigm shift. Once you see that fiat is a Ponzi scheme, it completely changes your mind. I agree with you 100%. So I started learning. I don't remember what year it was. It was either 2020 or 2021. I only started learning about this more recently, but I put a lot of time into it. Right, I left my job. I was actually driving for Uber Eats for a while, and I was just listening to podcasts while I was driving. Right, I would be doing like 8 hour shifts. I'd be learning for 8 straight hours. Right, it accumulated over time. I was doing this while I was a realtor. I was doing this while I was working at my other job. So it added up, right? All of that time added up. The first before I was listening to Peter Schiff. So I was just reading to I was listening to his information. I was listening to his podcast. During the pandemic, I started learning more and more about just economics. Before that, I was doing my CFA. CFA was done. After that, I started learning more and more. I started going deeper, right? I started listening to Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff was saying how, oh, this Bitcoin thing is a scam. It's going to zero. And I was thinking, why does this guy keep dedicating so much of his show to Bitcoin? Why is he trying to convince us not to buy Bitcoin? I don't even know about Bitcoin. Why is he talking to me about it? Right? I would, if without, I mean, I could actually thank him for talking about Bitcoin, right? Because in his podcast, it kind of it sparked it in my mind that, okay, this thing could be something. And then actually before that, my coworker was telling me, hey, learn about this thing. This thing is crazy. Bitcoin is something that's probably going to change the rest of the world. It's going to change a lot. I started learning that it was basically just multiple things combined that got me to really start thinking in that way. And then I started reading. the Bitcoin Standard from Seyfedin Ammous. That book was amazing. I feel like that I actually have it right behind. I have it behind me. You can see it there in the corner. So that book changed my perspective on how Bitcoin works, how money works. Before that, just based on based on what you were saying it's people think it's a Ponzi scheme. That's what I thought too, right? Before 2020, I thought Bitcoin was a Ponzi scheme because I hadn't done the research, right? I just assumed, hey, people think it's a Ponzi scheme, so yeah, maybe it is. I don't need to do any more research on this. And then I started digging deeper. Once you start, okay, so Michael Saylor's voice sounds very annoying when you don't know what he's talking about. But then once you understand it, it's like, wow, this guy really, he almost sounds like a crazy person to somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about, who hasn't done the research. But then once you've done the research, there are so many breakthroughs that he's gotten me through, right? His content has gotten me to think about things so differently. So it changed my perspective, right? So I think the Bitcoin Standard is one book that everybody needs to read, regardless of where they are in their Bitcoin journey. It doesn't matter. Read that book. I think it'll give you some perspectives. There's also the Fiat Standard from the same guy. But yeah, those changed my mind. Like I said, I thought Bitcoin was a Ponzi scheme until I started learning about it. And then I realized everything else is a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, the three books from Seyfedin Ammous are amazing. The Bitcoin Standard, the Fiat Standard, and the Principles of Austrian Economics. I think the third one it's called. This one is still on my read list, but I still have like
Mm.
is one of the books I'm like, why did I not read it till now? I think it will be great. And also, as you said, Peter Schiff is, I think, one of the greatest marketers for Bitcoin. It's he's dedicating so much of his life to Bitcoin. And he was also one of the first people I heard in Bitcoin when I researched, because there's a really popular debate with, I don't know who was the Bitcoin guy, Eric something.
Eric Gordon?
It could be, yes. It's like a really popular debate on the Soho forum, and it was
Right.
amazing to hear Peter Schiff versus him. And I was like, the more and more I get into this debate, first of all, I understood what money is, because both are like kind of against the fiat system, and they were teaching a little bit about what money actually is. And then I was like, Peter Schiff sounds really dumb, and then I researched a lot about it.
Yeah.
So my first things with him was like with the context of a Bitcoiner, and next to Bitcoiner, it almost feels like old man yelling at Bitcoin,
Yeah.
as this meme is
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
That's accurate.
It's actually so accurate, yeah. And you also have one of your last things I saw in your Twitter highlights was money lessons for kids. And I think it's so important to teach kids about Bitcoin and about money in general. And there is like a lot of, like, even Seyfedin Ammous is, I think, working in the Tuttle Twins cartoon. If you saw the Tuttle Twins cartoon already, it's
Yeah.
like a really cute cartoon for learning about Bitcoin. And stuff like that is so valuable. And maybe the question to you is like, what money lessons or Bitcoin lessons, because Bitcoin is money, can we teach our kids growing up? Like, I am now 25, I have no kids, but let's assume I get kids in the next 5 years. What should we teach those kids? What's like the most important stuff you think to know about money itself?
Um, I think something important would be that money doesn't have to be produced by a government, right? It doesn't have to be produced by a central party for it to be valuable, right? And I think they're going to get that themselves. I don't even think that parents are going to teach their kids. I think kids are going to teach their parents, if anything, right? A lot of parents are right now. A lot of parents, a lot of grandparents have no idea what Bitcoin is. I know. I actually spoke to my parents. I spoke to my in-laws about how Bitcoin is the future. It's where we're going. Kids are going to be teaching their parents, right? I don't think we need to teach our kids. I think our kids are going to teach us, right? But while they're young, of course, maybe we can tell them how um, your money is your life, right? It's what you haven't spent. It's what you've spent so much time earning, right? And if you if you're earning something that somebody else creates, it's slavery. In the past, in historical times when slavery was so obvious, workers were getting what houses, shelter, food from their master, right? Today we're working for those and we're struggling to get the exact same things that we were getting for free, right? Most people have to be working a lot of people are working more now than they were before, right? People are doing 3 jobs now, right? And they're getting less than they were getting as slaves. So, of course, I mean, I know a lot of people don't like that reference where, oh, you call fiat currency slaves, but that's a slavery, but that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, you're working to earn something that somebody else can create for free. Just that.
It's
That's what I want my kids to learn, right? But you want your kids to know this is if you're working for something that somebody else can create for free, you're not gonna be able to build wealth, right? You're not gonna save, you're not gonna have anything in the future. You're gonna be struggling financially because they're gonna create more.
and such an important lesson, because when you think about that, and really from first principles, and you are like, I work for something with my life's energy, and all they're giving me is something they made up. It's like
Yeah.
I'm going to someone else, like, hey, can you law my lawn? Can you do? Can you bring me some food? Can you cook something for me? And I'm like, yes. Wait, I will take a piece of paper, write something on. This is your.
Yeah.
This is what I give you for it. Everybody would say like, you're stupid. Like, I don't take this piece of paper, but you're taking the piece of paper of the government. Like, what's different about it? They made it up. Like,
But think about how many
why
things
are
are
you
just
taking it?
designed. Think about how many things are designed to get us to that point, right? Where we're basically never told what money is. Most people just believe that money is pieces of paper. If you try to convince them otherwise, they're gonna be like, no. It's so difficult to convince somebody that money is not paper. It's not paper. You need to get that out of your mind. But people will work as hard as they can to not believe that because they've been taught that since the day where they were born, right? They were told their entire lives that, oh, you're gonna save your coins and bills in this little piggy bank, and this is your money. But it's not money. You believe it, but it's not. It's not actual money. It's just a currency. It's something that's designed to lose value.
It's not at all money. Yeah, it's very, very, very true. We are having an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest,
Oh,
and it's an interesting question, because you also have like the financial background to it. If you would live in a world completely on a Bitcoin standard, what terms would it take for you to borrow out your Bitcoin to someone else? Like, what would it take for you to lend someone your Bitcoin to do something? Or would you
mm,
do this at all?
wow, that's a really good question. So right now, the risk-free rate for U.S. bonds is something like what is it, like 4 or 5%? I don't know what it is. I think that's around what it is for long-term bonds. Um, I mean, you can get GICs in Canada for 6% interest, and you're getting savings account with 6%. But there's so much risk involved, right? But in that case, the thing is that you can print your money for free. You can just create more of it. If somebody walks away with it, you can print more and make the person happy, right? If the bank walks away with your money, you can print more and give it to customers, and they'll continue to trust the system. I would put the rate higher than 6%. I would probably make it something like 10 to 12, 10 to 15, maybe even higher, right? Because it doesn't make any sense to me to give away something that's finite, something that I may never ever get back again at a low rate like 3%. I know there's people who get loans for much higher. sorry, much lower. They get loans for like 8%, 7%. To me, that doesn't make sense. Unless you have um, unless you have a pool of funds that are being lent out, it makes sense in that case because then the chances of somebody losing money is lower. But if it was me peer to peer lending to someone, I wouldn't do it for less than 12%, maybe 15%. So I mean, to me, it's not worth it to lend for anything less than that. I personally think that that's one of the reasons why house prices will also come down. It won't be worth it for lenders to lend Bitcoin for somebody to buy a house.
I mean, the whole credit system, everything that's built on top, and all the prices actually will come down on a Bitcoin standard, right? It's like
Yeah,
even your banana in the supermarket will come down in prices. Your iPhone will come down in prices. Your microphone will come down in prices. Everything you see around you, because we
yeah,
are getting more productive, you're getting more clever in producing a thing, whatever the thing is. The prices has to come down, and we are actually from a natural standpoint of view, as with capitalism, and we are in a deflationary system, and we are only experienced that inflationary system because we have the fiat system. So I think
yeah.
there's a lot of work that I think also Jeff Booth did with his work, The Price of Tomorrow, and it's like, yeah, it's a mind shift we have to make, and more and more people coming into the space, more and more educators as yourself. It's so important that we speak up about exactly that topic, and this was like also a kind of the thing why I make this podcast, because I want to show to everybody all those great minds in Bitcoin. And I think Rajat, you are an amazing speaker and extremely articulated when it comes to like what Bitcoin is and what it can do. So thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being part of our small Bitcoin movement to make the world a little bit better.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel like the education part is there because I've been teaching about personal finance for so long. It's been about 2.5 years. Um, yeah, I think more people are gonna get better. More people are gonna be getting better at teaching this. It'll become more and more widely available. I think podcasts like yours, podcasts like any others, platforms like mine, we're all gonna be helping a lot of people get off the sinking ship that fiat currencies are. All that stuff is gonna trend to zero forever. I think as people sell it, as people get it, as people understand where things are going, as people figure out where Bitcoin is going, they're going to get rid of all those things, and they are going to trend to zero, right? I appreciate having me on your podcast. Great conversation.
Thank you.